I'm back to putting your quote on the top of the bulletin. And I don't know how many, I actually got to hear Maya Angelou when she was speaking in Sarasota. It was an incredible evening. Just to hear her talk, the way she tells her stories are immensely powerful. But I found this quote of hers. She says, I've learned that people will forgive what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. I mean, this is probably very appropriate for every congregation in our community and in our world. You know, as the people of God, you know, sometimes we say things that we don't mean, or we say things that are harsh. And also, sometimes we do not act justly towards each other. We harm each other, we hurt each other. But Maya says, you know what? People will forget what you say. People will even forget the ways that you harm them. But they will never forget how you made them feel. Can you think of times when someone spoke to you and made you feel like you were just a child, ignorant of the world? Or perhaps a loved one said something to you, and because they were a loved one, it just cut to your core, because those words mean more to you than words from any other person. We should never forget that people remember how we made them feel. I don't know how I got on this music pattern, but I was thinking before the sermon, the temptations. And there are some temptations in the reading this morning. The first one is, the temptation is that we are not the shepherd. We hear the story about the good shepherd, and it's easily, especially as pastors, to see ourselves as the shepherd. And here we are, responsible for our flock, and everything resides on us. We are fully capable and fully responsible, and boy, that's a big responsibility. But we are not the shepherds, and neither are you the shepherd. We are all part of the flock. There's another temptation, that we are the gatekeepers. Our society has become so divided over religion. And we all want to experience God in our lives, and we have many different ways, but too often we spend so much time trying to figure out who's out that we don't have much time to spend with who's in our congregations. We feel like God has given us specific responsibility to determine that some people are unworthy of the church, while other people are more worthy. We do it also in our economics. We determine that some people are more worthy of wealth, and others are not. But we are not the gatekeepers. Pardon?
If they were worthy, I'm sure they were.
That's right. For all you good people, God will recompense. For all of you who don't find your recompense, maybe you're not good people. That's awesome. That's often the rationale. It's like, that was a biblical, it's like, if something happens, something tragic in your life, it's well, what did you do wrong? Why is God punishing you? You're not the gatekeepers. There is only one gatekeeper. Does anyone know? Jesus. All right? That we are sheep who are to follow blindly. Oh, I would love to have a flock like that. Unfortunately, that's not here at Westminster. So, the idea that, that when we get up there as a pastor, we're going to tell you all of our words of wisdom, and you will go home and follow every word to its very end. Or, we make ourselves the moderators of culture, that we are the pastors, and we can tell you what is good in our society and what is not good in our society, and hopefully you will follow what we say. But God, I can't believe that God would want a bunch of sheep. I think, God didn't create us to be so marvelously different. Why would God want to put that aside that we can all be drones of one another? We're not to follow blindly. We're not just to seek a group census and let that define who we are for all eternity. And finally, probably the most dangerous, that there is safety behind the gate. This is probably our biggest challenge as we're in the process of discerning our future, because, it's easier to go back to what was and live there for another 10, 20 years, if at all possible, than to be willing to go outside the gate. Transfiguration team, raise your hand again. Thank you. See, these people are somewhat the gatekeepers. But you know what they did is they threw the gate wide open. And they're going out into the world to see what God is leading us. I mean, we could just kind of hunker in and just wait and hope God provides a miracle. Or we can go out past the gate to see where God is calling us as a community. Now, I actually found this interesting, and probably won't need to have it for the rest of your life, but a little tidbit of what was happening when this scripture was being formed, and the politics of it. The Emperor Tiberius is reported to have rebuked a provincial governor intent on levying harsh taxes by saying it was part of a good shepherd to shear his flock, not skin it. So when we come around tax time next year, you may want to remember Tiberius when he was talking to his bureaucracy. That we're not to shear the flock. We're called to shear the flock, not skin it. And I suspect that's probably true in the church too. Sometimes we're more concerned about skinning it. Trying to weed out those who are not healthy and trying to find the perfect word that we lose sight that we really are shearing, which is a way of harvesting wool for our lives, for our livelihood, and it affects all of us. So thank you, Tiberius. This gets back to my angel. I learned that people will forgive what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. This is the gate. This is the gate. People will never forget how we made them feel. How do we tear down that gate? Here's a quote from Walter Brueggemann. He says, "We live in a world where the gap between scarcity and abundance grows wider every day. But the peculiar thing, at least from the biblical perspective, is that the rich, the ones with abundance, rely on an ideology of scarcity, while the poor, the ones suffering from scarcity, rely on an ideology of abundance." How can that be? I remember when I was young, I was in seminary and trying to figure out how I was going to pay my college bills, and now I had to, for the seminary I had to pay, I had to pay for my lodging, and of course everyone wants to have a little life, even when they're in school. And I remember telling my friend, I said, I just can't wait till I get out of school and I get my first church and I have my salary, and then I won't have to worry about money anymore. And he looked me in the eye and said, Dan, the older you get, the more that you want, your expectations will simply rise with your income. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I don't know how true that is, because, I think there are people of wealth who are tremendously generous with their funds. When you think of the Carnegies and all that they created for the community, they may have had a downfall, but they certainly made sure that their investments in art be passed on to the people, not just for the wealthy. And certainly there are poor people who make bad decisions over and over and over again. But I suspect it's probably mostly true How do we know that we have enough? How can we make sure that our great-grandchildren will have resources? So we never have enough, but the poor know that they don't have enough. And they can celebrate what they have, knowing it could be far worse. This is going to be an extended quote from William Clark. It's actually a song. And it took a while to find it. I remember hearing it on the radio, and so I spent yesterday trying to find it again. He says, I've been to so many places, not knowing just what I'd find. I've seen so many different faces, but they always stay fresh in my mind. Some of them seem so lonely, trying to make it on their own, wondering where to turn to knowing. And he says, you can't make no blood out of stone. People everywhere just want to be free, but they find it so hard to be what they gotta be. Gotta be teaching of their society. Brother, you've got the power to make a change. Sister, you've got the power to rearrange. You've got the power. Wow. When we look at our lives, when we think about what God is doing in our lives, we can sit in the pasture, looking at those gates and say, wow, much safer in here than it is out there. But perhaps we're missing out the fact that God gave us power to go into the world. We've got the power. And how do you think that applies for us as Westminster Presbyterian Church? Do you think we have the power? Not a lot of enthusiasm here. Do you think we have the power?
Yes.
All right. We've got the power. If Westminster has a future, it's because we desire it to be. We've got the power to engage our community. I tell you, Ashley wrote, did you see the ministry team plan? Yes. What did you think about it? It's powerful. A powerful vision of our community as Westminster. We've got the power. It's only going to happen if we make it possible. If we are willing to live into it, to get out of the gate. Not just nose up the gate, but get out of the gate and following the shepherd wherever that shepherd may go. Life means that believers share in the very life of God and the relationship of God and Jesus. And where do you think God, Jesus, might be found? Anyone, where might Jesus be found? This is not rocket science. Here, absolutely. Where else? Outside. Where else? Everywhere. What about down the street, Dixieland? They got the power. What about our members who are down in the Presbyterian homes? They got the power. What about our visitors here this morning? You got the power. You know what? Because we'd love to have you come back. But even whether you decide to stay with us, you've got the power. We've got the power to change our world. Empowerment as abundant life. People will never forget how you made them feel. One of the things that they always talk about in church growth is that on Sunday morning when a visitor comes in, and she already got a head start with us this morning. She was over the fellowship hall. She knew what the food was. If you walk into a sanctuary and you sit down and no one says anything to you, do you think they're going to come back the next Sunday? No. Let me tell you a story. I think I've told you this before, so I'm repeating myself, but when I was a member of a single congregational church, it was before I was a member. I heard the pastor preach, decided to check out the church. And that Sunday morning, I ride by myself, walk